Are you feeling devalued as an outcast? Perhaps your family, your friends don't give you your value, your worth. Well, when I came to this country many years ago, I was 12 years old. My father was studying in a university, Andrews University. And I arrived at 12 years old. I was not the popular girl in the class. And I arrived from Argentina. I didn't speak a lot of English. I was using used clothing from a thrift shop. And the popular girls didn't really like me very much. And I felt such an outcast, so ostracized, until one girl, her name is Linnell Blazin. I will never forget her name. She was kind. She came close to me with her big glasses, and she said, "Do you want to be my friend?" And I started to be her friend. And then I was going to her house, and we were playing ping pong, playing in the snow, going to concerts. And all of a sudden, I belonged. And just by making friends with her, I just felt I had a whole different value. And Jesus used to do this for a lot of people in the Gospel of Luke. He told them the value that they had in his eyes. We continue with our series on the Gospel of Luke. And we, on the last episode, talked about a Pharisee and a tax collector, and how the tax collector went home declared just by God just because he asked for mercy. But the Pharisee, who thought he was all that, he didn't go home justified. Well, today we're going to talk about a real case, a real story in Luke chapter 19 of a real tax collector, not just a parable, not just a story, that Jesus went to visit. And this man was not liked by anybody. So come with me. Luke chapter 19, and we start with this name, Zacchaeus. Perhaps you know the story, you have heard about Zacchaeus. Actually, the name Zacchaeus means righteous or pure, but he was anything but that, right? He was hated by his people. And it's interesting because the parable of Jesus of Luke 18 talks about the tax collector, which in Greek is telonis. This man is called an architelonis. And some Bibles have translated as a chief tax collector. So let's start reading. Luke 19, verses 1 and 2. He entered Jericho and was passing through, and there was a man called by the name of Zacchaeus. He was a chief tax collector, and he was rich. Architelonis, it seems to be like the head of the tax collectors or the main one. We don't find that name anywhere else. So we know he is like the chief of something of that area or other tax collectors, and he's rich. Now, Jericho, of course, was a good spot. It was an important trade route from Jerusalem to the east. Many people were wealthy there. But he had that profession of tax collecting, which was a shady profession because, first of all, he was hated by his own people, his own countrymen. He was getting taxes for the oppressor of his people. And usually the tax collectors kept a little for themselves, meaning that they charged a little more than was required, and then they kept that for themselves. So maybe you have had this feeling of being an outcast, being devalued. I like these Russian dolls because they help us with understanding how sometimes we feel smaller and smaller and smaller. He didn't have a lot of friends, so inside he's feeling a little smaller. He is talked about as an actual sinner because of his profession. So maybe you have dealt with that before, where you're doing something that nobody else approves and you're feeling smaller. But on top of that, he knows he's not doing the right thing. So if we keep going, we're going to find that Zacchaeus was a very small man, not just in stature, but actually in his heart. And we are told that he actually wanted to see Jesus so much. Verse 3, Zacchaeus was trying to see who Jesus was and was unable because of the crowd. And he was a small stature, but also his heart was getting a little small because he had no friends. He was unpopular. He was in a shady business. He was hated by everybody. He was called a sinner. So verse 4, he ran on ahead and climbed up into a sycamore tree. My version says that means is fig mulberry tree. But I want to show you a sycamore tree. I went to Jericho. There's one place that is traditionally the sycamore tree that Zacchaeus climbed. I'm sure that it's a little, maybe it's not, but it did give me a great idea of what a sycamore tree looked like. If you can see in the photo, there are big, thick branches. Of course, anybody could have climbed and sat there, right? And the Bible tells us that that's exactly what he did. And Jesus was about to pass through that way. And when Jesus came to the place, he looked up and said to him, Zacchaeus, he's calling him by name, hurry and come down, for today I must stay at your house. I must. It's an imperative in the Greek. I have to stay at your house. And hurry and come down. And verse 6 says, and he hurried and came down. He did exactly what Jesus told him and received him gladly. He received him with joy. And we are told that he was rejoicing. And in contrast to the crowd, verse 7, the rest of the people saw it and they all began to grumble. Zacchaeus is rejoicing. Everybody else is grumbling, saying he has gone to be the guest of a man who is a sinner. Here we know how he was feeling as a public sinner. But at that moment, we see the motivation of grace. When you're valued, when you're told who you are in the eyes of Christ, immediately it changes and overflows. And Zacchaeus stopped, verse 8, and said to the Lord, behold, Lord, half of my possessions I will give to the poor. And if I have defrauded anyone of anything, I will give back 4 times as much, which was much more than the law required. The law required restitution plus 1/5. You can read this in Leviticus 6:5 and Numbers 5:7. He's giving so much more because he is known now as himself as loved and valued. And then Jesus said on verse 9, today salvation has come to this house because he too is a son of Abraham. The word today is usually used in Luke to show the immediacy of salvation. And he accepts Jesus and immediately salvation has come to his house, to his heart, to his mind. He's loved and he's valued. And Jesus then says on verse 10, something I want you to remember. The Son of Man has come to seek and to save that which was lost. I love this cross. This cross has a heart in it, like our logo does. Because Jesus values everyone. He valued you so much that even if you were lost or considered an outcast by your family and friends, he says, no, your value in my eyes is so great that I was willing to die for you because I want you. You have value in my eyes. And you know, whenever you're thinking, what is my worth in his eyes? Look at the cross and you will remember the value you have in his eyes. And yeah, he has come, the Son of Man, verse 10, has come to seek and to save that which was lost. So even if you're feeling really small or other people have made you feel really small, remember your value in his eyes. The price he paid, well, look at the cross. And then you will say to yourself, yes, I am valued because you are valued and you are valued that much. Don't forget, you are valued.